Earlier, free agency in the summer. So there could be endless possibilities for a number of NBA teams with names like Giannis, Kevin Durant floating out there this offseason. And Shams had an eye-opening comment about this Tuesday on the Pat McAfee Show. Listen up, guys.
I think this offseason might be the most craziest ever. You have the parity
English
in the
class
league.
sucks.
It's so thin right now. Like, as far as the thin line of what you can win a championship or you might be falling into the lottery. And I think the ability to go out there and improve your team and get there to championship level, I think that's on the minds of everyone around the league.
All right, this calls for a Windy watch. Windy, all eyes on you. What team and star are you watching out for this offseason?
Okay, so obviously we know that Giannis is going to be the guy who creates a domino effect. Before I even get to Giannis, though, can you please just, Molly, just stay with me 1 minute?
Sure.
What was the most impactful trade that led to the 2024 championship? The answer was Drew Holiday being traded to the Boston Celtics, okay? What could end up being the most impactful trade that affects the 2025 championship? I would argue that it might be Alex Caruso being traded to the Thunder. Okay, so while I understand that the star players drive so much of what happens in this league, the NBA is at a place where right now depth matters. And putting all your team into 2 or 3 star players, I don't think is necessarily a winning formula. Okay, that's my preamble. I'll put that aside. What I think is important about those 2 trades was that the Drew Holiday trade doesn't happen until the Dame Lillard trade happens. So yes, we are going to focus on what happens with Giannis. Absolutely. Giannis's decision about whether he wants to be traded or not. Secondly, about whether or not Giannis is going to have a full control over where he gets traded. Because he's got 2 years on his contract. It's a little bit of a gray area. The Bucks, to get the maximum value, may not be able to give him exactly what he wants. But giving him exactly what he wants may make things a lot easier. So I think that's a big factor. But the key to me is the Giannis domino effect, where he might get traded and what that might trigger, both with the teams involved in the trade and the other teams that come around it. So Giannis is going to say a lot of things. And while I could list you a bunch of teams that could make a big offer for him, if I was Giannis and I'm looking at the lay of the land right now, I want to stay in the Eastern Conference. I don't want to go to a Western Conference team because it's going to be a really hard mountain to climb.
The only problem with that, and I understand that completely, Wendy, I hear you. What Eastern team has both the assets to go out and get Giannis and then have enough on the other side of a trade to seriously contend? And I look at we know the usual suspects. Everybody's going to mention New York first, going to mention the Knicks. They might even mention the Nets, which to me is slightly insane. But if you look at the team, I'm going to go west now. If you look at the Spurs that are sitting there with the numbers 2 and 14 picks in the first round, the very first round. And if you're Milwaukee, that's got to attract you. And I'm not giving up Castle. Don't even mention his name. I'm not coming to the phone or staying on the phone if you ask me to give up the Rookie of the Year, who I think has a bit of early SGA-ism. If you want to look at a guy and project a little bit, Castle to me has that. I'm not giving him up, but there's some players on that roster I can give up and still come away with De'Aaron Fox, Wembanyama, Giannis Antetokounmpo, and the Rookie of the Year. Look at the 4 players you come back with on the other side of such a deal. I don't know that can anybody in the East match that?
I don't know if they can match it, but there is one team in particular that I think is going through a revamp and a gap year in the Boston Celtics where it could be interesting. Right? Jason
you give
Tatum.
Up one of the 2 stars. Have to, right?
Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum. Probably on the side of Jaylen Brown more than Jason Tatum because of his versatility and how he plays. There are also new ownership, so it's fluid. Right? New ownership coming in. What kind of salaries can he actually sustain? And Porzingis getting older, Al Horford getting older, Drew Holiday getting older. You have Derek White kind of lingering there. I would rather keep Derek White. I'm not sure draft collateral what they have, Brian, but it seems like Boston's in that sweet spot to a degree, at least in my opinion. Maybe.
Also, I just want to throw out one other name, Brian, before you respond. What about Miami? They need someone. I don't know if they have the pieces to do it, but Miami needs a star.
Again, the equation to me is enough to give up to satisfy Milwaukee in a trade,
because they want to contend,
and
right?
enough to come on the other side of it, and Giannis to be somewhere where you still got enough to win. That is easier in the Eastern Conference, to Wendy's point, but I don't know.
Wendy, and then there's the KD of it all.
I don't think Miami has the perfect set of circumstances. I think Boston was more interesting before the devastating Tatum injury, because I don't know what you're going to possibly think you get from Jason Tatum next year. Before that, I think that was a real conversation, and maybe it still could be. I think New York is definitely a conversation for sure. But
wait, which
Wilbon
New
is
York?
correct.
Just
the
the
Spurs.
Well, New York means New York.
Well,
Brooklyn would mean the Nets.
Brooklyn isn't.
I'm just saying this is, you know.
Brooklyn doesn't have a.
Brooklyn's a good spot too. Go
It's
ahead.
I love Brooklyn. I'm a Nets fan. Just
Go ahead, Wendy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Brooklyn doesn't have a real. You know, they might have a plan, but they don't have a demonstrable pathway right now that if they traded for Giannis on the other side, they would have a championship team ready to go. So again, this comes down to whether the Bucks are getting the highest value or they're working with Giannis. We don't have a clarity of that yet. It's so very important. But Wilbon is correct. The Spurs could probably put together the best package, including the number 2 pick in this draft. And if you were okay with saying, all right, I'm making a 5-year, 3 or 5 year decision, yes. If you're making a 1 to 2 year decision, I mean, I was listening to Chris Finch last night, and he was laying out how he thinks 13 or 14 teams in the West next year could be, quote unquote, going for it. And he went so far as to say you could have a great year in the Western Conference next year and go 42-40. Those are his words, having just led the 6th seed to the Western Conference Finals. So I don't think you can just ignore that.
Have reached their 5th NBA Finals in franchise history, and they're the 2nd since the team moved to Oklahoma City. In the first round, the Thunder mounted a 29-point comeback in Game 3. The Thunder outscored the Grizzlies by 78 points in the series, their 2nd largest point differential in franchise history. In the Western Conference semis, the Thunder clinched the series in blowout fashion, beating the Nuggets by 32 points in Game 7, the 32-point win, the 7th largest in a Game 7 in NBA history and largest in franchise history. The Thunder routed the Timberwolves last night by recording their 4th 30-point win in the postseason, earning their ticket to the NBA Finals. The team's 4 30-point wins are the most in a single postseason in NBA history. The Thunder will face the winner of Pacers and Knicks in the NBA Finals. The Thunder went 2-0 against the Pacers in the regular season, winning by an average of 13.5 points, and were 2-0 against the Knicks by an average of 17.5 points. Overall, the Thunder went 29-1. That's unbelievable. Against the Eastern Conference this season. The best record by any team against the opposite conference since conferences were established in 1970. All right, I know I threw a lot
of numbers.
That was a lot of numbers. I know I probably bored you.
They're historic.
But that last one against the Eastern Conference, come on, Monica, you were impressed with that.
Who's the one? Did Cleveland get him?
I don't know.
I need to know. We need to
Monica,
know who the one
after all those numbers, you're going to ask me the one number I don't have?
My bad, Molly.
That's
It's not you.
That's messed up. What a blow my spot.
It's not you, Molly. No, it's not
It
you.
is Cleveland.
That's what I thought.
Thanks
Yeah.
to
It is
Kwaku,
Cleveland.
our
Yeah.
amazing producer. I wasn't sure. Okay, great to have you with us. Wilbon, can either the Knicks or Pacers take down OKC?
It's hard to see. It's just hard to see at this point because of the way OKC's playing. Like, I'm not pinning what we saw last night and in these last couple of games on Minnesota as much as I'm crediting Oklahoma City for just, they're flexing right now. They're understanding and realizing all that they can be right before our eyes. And we've seen this happen with championship teams over time. I go back and I think about Kobe and Shaq when they got on that run. And it was almost like they looked at themselves and said, oh my God, can you believe we can do this? We saw this with the Warriors. So you see this now and then. We're seeing it with OKC now. I don't want to sit here and say, no, I remember one big upset, you guys weren't even born then, where, you know, the Washington Bullets were supposed to take down Golden State and Rick Barry, and oops, it happened the other way around. Big betting favorite goes down. That doesn't happen very often in the NBA Finals. And I tell you the truth, I don't see it.
I see Indiana. I don't see Knicks having a chance. I think that probability is probably lower. I would give maybe 30%, 25% for Indiana. They would have to make the game very frantic in their style of play. The problem is OKC has the personnel that is adaptive to that frantic pace and defensively applies pressure that I think for the guy that initiates the offense in Tyrese Halliburton, they can hinder that very differently than a lot of other teams could. But because it's Rick Carlisle, because they have some of the pieces, I would give them a legitimate chance. I'm not sure the depth, to me, if the Knicks are able to somehow come back being down 3-1 after having Detroit, Boston, and then this series, I think would be detrimental to them in the NBA Finals for as much of that load would be on Jalen Brunson and Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, the bodies they would throw at him and the style of play they would have.
Woo! That would be a whole lot.
A whole lot to get
That'd be
through.
a Tyson Spinks
Yes.
situation.
Goodness gracious. I agree. If the Knicks manage to get out of this series, it is going to be taxing. I think they would be spent, and it would not smell good news should they win if they were to run into the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I got to say, y'all, from like just a basketball in general point, the idea of the Pacers Thunder is actually really intriguing.
Same. It's
On a
exciting.
number-
It's exciting as hell.
On a number of levels. Now, I will say this, and I was literally talking to my husband last night. I think the Pacers have not gotten their due. But when I actually think about if the topic is defense, because OKC is historic defensively, for the Pacers, agree, disagree, I go Nesmith, Nembhard, Siakam. Then I probably go Mathurin. Before I would go Miles Turner. Now, granted, terrific shot blocker, but if stretch big, Chet Holmgren, similar to Cat, it's maybe not as. But after those four defenders, I'm kind of like, okay, now y'all got prolific scorers, but that's sort of where their defender, high-level defender cap runs out to me. And obviously for OKC, you're talking about 8 easy, solid defenders, if not more. So that, to me, the Carlisle call by UJ is actually really, really interesting. But I just think the idea of the depth and the waves they can come at you with the speed versus the depth and the waves that the Thunder come at you defensively is really, really intriguing.
Now, the only way to beat a great defense is to not let it get set, right? I mean, so we talk about that adaptability.
Correct.
And
But how do you slow down teams?
right?
But how do you take pace away from a team? You take quality shots. So there's no long rebounds. Like, you make them defend.
And by the way, like, thank God for SGA. I just want to say that. It's like, welcome back to the mid-range game in basketball. Somebody who has mastered it. You talk about slowing down the pace of a game and getting into operational zones and taking high-efficient shots. That's what OKC does.
One of the ways in which you see teams upset is that they become full of themselves either overnight or all of a sudden they get too presumptuous. There's no hint of that with OKC. We saw that at times, or sometimes they just overrate themselves, or we do. Houston Rockets of the Harden vintage. They were talented. They had a lot of stuff. They weren't ready. They were flawed in a way. I don't see OKC being flawed either strategically or emotionally. I mean, they just seem like they are such a bedrock. The behaviors, all of them, everything we see about them says we're about business and we're pursuing this. They're almost stalking it. And it's just hard to see anybody knocking them off course right now.
Who's guarding Ali? Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Oh, Lou Dort.
Okay. Okay, yeah.
Oh, Lou Dort.
Yeah. Okay.
But then they can still pass them off.
I know. I think
Like they
I
can
think
still,
of
you
Jordan
still
against
got
bigger players.
You still
but
got Caruso. You still got. I mean, they got
And
so
you
many
wear
guys.
him
You got Case and Wallace, who people don't even know yet.
Jason Wiles, exactly.
Who is going to be an all-league defender as soon as somebody leaves that team and he gets promoted or he leaves and goes somewhere else and he's the guy defensively.
You know what the problem is with OKC? Because of the way SGA plays and he creates so much offense as well. And it's something that I don't feel like Indiana has because it would be beneficial in how they play, or New York has, is they have such a depth of guys. Like, yo, your job, him tonight. Him. Like, I don't need you to worry about shooting shots from the outside. Like, that's what we talk about the Knicks, right? Against Hallie. It's like, well, we're going to put Mikal Bridges on him, but then we need Mikal later in the game to give us offensive production. Are we going to put, Landry Fields, Shamet? Landry Fields. Landry Shamet on him, but then somewhat you have a little bit of a liability if he's off the ball offensively, he can shoot. OKC don't got that problem.
No.
Like, yo, that's your main
And they're accepting of it.
Yes, they own it.
Night to night or series to series, whatever that is.
We're going to be talking about them like the Spurs. Like,
Okay,
they
that's
stay on this
that's where I
trajectory
want to
like
go
the
now.
Spurs.
Put it in historical perspective for us. Is this an all-time great team, this OKC team, or do you have to have a championship to be
You got to have a championship, and maybe you have to have two. I mean, I look back on teams that, I go back to conversations I was fortunate enough to have with Kobe Bryant about getting over the hump. And remember, early in his career, he and Shaq, they had some rough times. You had to finish. Were they great already? Yeah. But greatness as a team is validated only by winning a championship. I remember the Bulls of Jordan and Pippen and Horace Grant before Robin got there. They had to win that second one. And then it was like, they're now going to take off and you can't beat them. That is the case, I think. OKC's got to win this one. And let's see where they go with health. You can have, Jay Will, we talked about this on Get Up this morning. You can have one contract dispute blow up your team.
Boom.
Sure could.
In a heartbeat.
Or an injury.
Or an injury. Yes, Monica. So either one of those things. So you got to finish this off, and then let's see how they run. Oh my goodness, the Portland Trailblazers, they went like 50-4 one year, and Bill Walton got hurt, and it was never the same, the history of the franchise. So before we start talking about all-time great, you got to win at least one, at least.
Let me push back on. Can I push back on one thing really quick? I'm sorry to interrupt. What about 2016 Warriors team though? 73 wins.
No, they didn't win.
Yeah, but and I think that will always be sort of an asterisk in the Warrior conversation, but you can't deny the four.
Right. The four makes them that.
Yeah.
But you're talking about one season? No.
Yeah.
The 2016 team didn't.
Okay. But I'm with Molly though. Okay, I got to follow up. Go.
No, I was gonna say I think they are an all-time great regular season team. I'm not sure if that has transitioned.
You're talking
to
about
all-time.
OKC.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's only 7 teams in history of the league that have won 68 regular season games or more. So that puts you in a pretty, rarefied air.
Absolutely.
But we value championships.
By the way, did all 6 of those teams win? The 2 Bulls teams won. The Lakers won.
The Warriors didn't.
The Warriors didn't. So maybe the Warriors are the only team that didn't win. The Sixers back in Wilt, they did win. They won 60s. So, to me.
But it's like it gets held against you, though, Mike. If you win this many games and you don't finish the job.
And these guys have to know that.
Yes.
They've heard enough about this now. And SGA, such an awareness, right?
Yeah.
Beyond his
he
years.
seems mature for his age.
He
Absolutely.
really does.
I agree. That conversation only, it made me think of last year's Boston team, right? And we just talked about, what's the opposite of fortuitous? Is unfortuitous a word?
Ooh,
anyway,
unlucky.
Unfortunate.
For sure.
Unfortunate bounces because of that iteration of that crew. The expectation was for them
by
to
the way,
get
I
more.
just have to say, I'm sad to see that. I know everyone's like predicting that Boston could potentially get blown up.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I'm sad we're done seeing that roster.
I'm with you too. It was fun. It's
Yeah. And it was dominant.
It was supposed to be dynastic.
It was
It was the way it ended, though. Like,
Yeah, it's
Porzingis,
heartbreaking.
nobody knew what the hell was going on with him.
And then the
Jason
Tatum
Tatum
is
injury.
depressing. Back to Monica's point. You can have that. How do you guard? You can't guard against it, really.
Yeah.
You have to have some luck.
Yeah.